Okay, so let's discuss now what is serverless. So serverless is something new, and the developers, when you use serverless services, you don't have to manage servers anymore. So it's not that you don't have servers anymore, it's just that you don't manage them. You just deploy code. And originally, you just deployed functions. So initially, serverless meant function as a service, or FaaS. But now, serverless means a lot more. So in the beginning, serverless was pioneered by AWS Lambda that we'll see in this section, but now also includes anything that is remotely managed. So databases, messaging, storage, as long as you don't provision servers. So serverless doesn't mean there are no servers, it just means you don't see them or you don't provision them. So if we drill down into what serverless means in AWS, we have our users, and they would get, for example, static content from our S3 bucket, delivered as a website, or CloudFront plus S3. Then we would log in with Cognito. This is where our users would have their identity stored, and they would invoke your REST API through the API gateway. The API gateway would invoke Lambda functions, and Lambda functions would store and retrieve data from DynamoDB. So this is just an example. This section is going to be dedicated to learning a lot of things around Lambda, DynamoDB, API gateway, Cognito, and so on. But so it's just to give you a reference architecture for serverless applications. So in AWS, it's Lambda, DynamoDB, Cognito, API Gateway, Amazon S3, but also things we've already seen, such as SNS and SQS. Yes, indeed, we did not manage any servers for SQS and SNS, and it was scaling on its own, so that fits the serverless use case. Kinesis Data Firehose, because again, it scales based on the throughput you have, you just pay for what you use, and you don't provision servers. Aurora Serverless, when your Aurora database scales on demand without you managing servers, step functions, and Fargate, because Fargate was a serverless function of ECS, where we didn't provision the infrastructure to run our Docker containers. So hopefully that's a short and sweet introduction to serverless. In the next lecture, we'll be starting with AWS Lambda, and it will be a lot of content to learn, but the exam does test you heavily on your serverless knowledge, so let's get started.